Today is January 5th, and I am conducting an oral history interview with Mr. Frank Bolcar, born on
12/16/24.
and living at Parsippany.
Right.
My name is Lawrence Green from the local history department of the Morristown and Morris Township Public Library. Mr. Bolcar, will you please state what wars, branch of service you served in, your rank, and where you served?
I was in World War II and ended up as a technical sergeant, and I served in England and France as well as the U.S.
And as a way of an introduction, could you tell us a little bit about your life before your time in service? For instance, were you born in Morristown?
I was born in Boonton.
Boonton, and what schools did you attend?
Mount Carmel Catholic School, and John Hill Public School, and Boonton High School.
And can you tell us a little about your parents, for instance, their employment, their ancestry, your siblings?
Well, my family roots are from Slovakia. And I had the opportunity to go back and find the town where they all came from. And my dad was born in Boonton, and my mom was born in Rockaway. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. 2 of them have passed away.
And how about the Depression? Was your family affected?
Oh yeah, we lost. My dad lost a house, and we went to live in a 4-room cold water apartment, $25 a month, and it was 2 bedrooms. 5 of us slept in one, and my mother, father, and a baby slept in the other. And things picked up. He went to work in Picatinny Hospital. He moved up the line there and did well.
All right, I'm going to move on to the war. Could you tell us if you were drafted or did you enlist?
Well, actually, there was 3 of us were sitting around one day, and we were talking about all the friends that we were losing to the service. So we said, why don't we go up and volunteer, and we'll go away together. And it didn't happen. I went first, and I never saw the other 2 for 3 years.
Do you know where they ended up?
I'm not sure now. I think one was in the Navy, but I'm not sure.
And that's why you joined, because you saw all your...
Everybody we knew was on their way.
And why did you pick the service you did?
I didn't really pick it. I just went up in the draft and went and volunteered for the next draft.
Okay. And do you recall your first days in service?
Yeah.
What did it feel like?
Well, we went to a little camp in Virginia, Camp Pickett, and it was kind of an experience being with strange people, bunkmates and all. And we went through regular basic training. Then we took some tests, and I ended up going to Hot Springs, Arkansas, to a medical training place. I trained to be a medical surgical technician, which was, in a way, good because most of the people that were combat medics had a tough time surviving. So,
You served in a surgical unit?
yeah, in the hospital.
In a hospital. Good. Could you tell me a little bit about your basic training experiences? How tough was it?
Well, we did pretty good. We had a tough sergeant, and I remember we were pretty good at close order drill, and we marched in front of Eisenhower. We came down for a show, but there wasn't that much because it was only there a month.
And all your training was done until then you went to Arkansas?
Yeah, I went to Hot Springs, Arkansas.
How long were you there?
Well, I went to the Army and Navy General Hospital. The first month we were there, we went on book work. Then they would assign us to work in the hospital part-time, plus the school work. And it was pretty hard to get used to seeing people in some of the conditions. And then they were setting up our hospital in Camp Robinson near Little Rock, Arkansas. and I was assigned there. We took our training, and we ended up in Europe, in England.
How big was your class, and did you go?
I don't remember the class. There was a room full.
And you all went different directions?
Yeah, well, everybody went more or less different.
Okay. Could you tell us exactly where you went?
Yeah, we went to England, near a town near Malvern, which brought back a lot of memories of Booton, because it was like on the side of a hill. But there was 5 general hospitals in the area, and I went to work in a neurosurgical ward.
What year was it?
43, 44.
And so most of the patients were Air Corps?
No, they were Army, different types, you know. They're mostly nerves, brain, spinal damage. It was something. But we had some remarkable people, too.
Would you want to share any of those?
Well, there was one guy, I always remember him. His name was Bob Uso. He was a staff sergeant in the Rangers. I don't know whether you know what the Rangers are.
I spent 10 years.
And he came through. He had nerve damage in his right arm, and he had the surgery done, and we sent him to rehab. And his wound wasn't that serious that he could go home, so they sent him back. I often wonder what happened to him. And then in January of '46, I was back in England on leave in London. And I saw the spur sergeant and the Rangers walking down the street. I went over and introduced myself, and I said, the reason I want to know if you know a fellow named Bob Uso. He said, oh yeah, he said, he was in my outfit. I said, you know what happened to him? He said, I sure do. He said, when they sent him back from the first injury, they sent him to a regular Army outfit. And he found out where we were, and he stole a truck and he joined us. And we were going up a hill on the Brest Peninsula, and Bob was next to me, and as we were going up, I heard Bob say, I'm hit, I'm hit. And that was it. And I found out, sadly, what happened to this guy, and he was remarkable. But there's a lot like him now, you know.
And do you remember what it was like when you first arrived in England?
Well, we landed in Wales, and we were set up in private homes in Wales. And it was, because our hospital buildings weren't ready yet. And the first night we were there, we were living in the 3rd floor in a private home. And we heard singing, and we looked out the window, and there was a bunch of Welsh kids singing to us. So we went down, and we're standing there listening to them, and all of a sudden I feel a little hand in mine. I looked down at this little kid, and I asked him his name, is Jimmy. So after the singing was over, I said, how about an orange? He said, what's an orange? So I put him on my shoulder. I was taking him in the house, and the landlady said, where are you going with that ragamuffin? I said, I'm going upstairs to give him an orange. She said, you can't bring that ragamuffin into this house. I said, lady, as long as Uncle Sam's paying the rent, I'm bringing him in. And I did. And the next morning, there he was waiting for me. He took my mess kit and always went to the mess hall with it, waiting for me there. And I put his trees in there for him. I often wonder what happened to him.
Did you, I got the famous saying, they're overpaid, oversexed, and over here. Did you experience any resentment from any?
Yeah, the British, I think the British soldiers kind of resented us because we had more money and everything. Yeah.
I just want to see if this is working.
All right.
Don't know which. Well, did you see combat?
No. I saw the results.
You saw a lot of casualties.
Oh, yeah.
So, can you tell us how that affected you emotionally?
Well, it was really tough because one of my functions was to prepare the body for the morgue. You know, I was in charge of the men on the ward. That was one of my duties. That I didn't appreciate at all. These poor guys. And seeing some of them in a condition, we did send quite a few home, but still, knowing that they would never be 100% again was sad.
Could you tell me a few of your most memorable experiences?
Well, VE Day was something. The surgeon, a couple of nurses, and myself went into the clothing room where we had racks. I was sitting on a rack, and they went and got some Scotch whiskey, and we celebrated the victory. Then going to France, I got a furlough to the Riviera, which was remarkable to see that. Blue Mediterranean things. And then I finally getting to come home. I hadn't seen my family in 2.5 years. I was sitting at home with my mother, and I hear this voice, "Hey, Mom, I'm home," with a deep voice. And what the heck is that? When I went away, that voice was a little tiny voice. Now it was a grown-up voice. That was a surprise.
So in a unit like yours, I would imagine there's more officers than enlisted, or kind of.
No, there was 500 people in the unit. And I'm not sure how many officers, but the ratio was
About average for.
for a hospital unit. Yeah. Officers and nurses, because the nurses were officers too.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Just the overseas medal.
How did you stay in touch with your family, if you did?
I wrote.
Letters? Did they?
Yeah.
And they wrote back any
Yeah.
packages?
No, we didn't do. Things were kind of rough with them. So.
And did your unit have plenty of supplies?
Oh yeah.
Never a shortage of.
No. Like we we took blood and blood transfusions and all, but we were pretty capable.
How about the stress and the pressures in serving in that kind of a unit?
Well,
It must have been pretty
you'll
hard.
never get used to seeing anybody die.
Right.
You know, and some of them were a little bit more remarkable than others, and seeing what they went through.
Some of them have stayed with you through
Oh, yeah.
60 years, yeah.
Yeah, I had one guy, he had nerve injury in his arm, and it was just a big pain in the neck compared to some of the other. So we took him into a room, and the doctor gave him sodium pentothal. And then he said to him, after it took effect, he said, "Why are you causing so much trouble? Your wound will heal, and you'll be as good as new." And the reason he was such a problem was that he was the sole support of his father, his mother, and his wife and kids, and he was concerned that his arm would be damaged permanently and he wouldn't be able to work. So the doctor assured him that he was going to be fine, and that was it. That was an experience to see that.
15 million of those stories.
Yeah.
You see. Well, what was the food like?
Yeah, and it wasn't bad.
Plenty of it.
Yeah. The mess kits and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of quantity over quality.
Yeah. Well, after the war ended, I went to France. They broke our unit up and they sent me to the Quartermaster Corps. And they sent me out with 3 truckloads of supplies to this camp. And when I got there, the guy said, "You're just in time for lunch." So I went in, he gave me a tray, and I'm standing in line, and there was German prisoners that were cooks. And the guy said to me, "How do you want your steak?" I said, "Steak? I never had a steak in my life." That was a treat.
So you ate better in the Army than you did at home?
Well,
right?
yeah, at that time, yeah.
Wow. How did you, was there something special you did for luck?
Not really,
No.
no.
One about your daily routine?
Yeah, yeah. I had good people to work with,
Yeah.
you know, the nurses and the doctors.
And your off-duty hours, what did you do to entertain yourself?
Well, we'd go to a pub, and then there was dance halls, and I remember there was one in the city of Worcester called the Catholic Hall, and they had a big sign on the wall, no jitterbug, and we completely ignored it. And then when I went back on leave, I went to Worcester and I went dancing at the Catholic Hall, and I was jitterbugging, and all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around and this great big guy says to me, "What's the matter?" He pointed to the sign, he said, "What's the matter? Can't you read?" I said, "Well, when we were here before, we didn't pay any attention to it." He said, "But there's not so many of you here now, is there?"
He didn't feel quite as intimidated as he did before, I guess?
No.
That's funny. Did you get any leave?
Yeah, when I got to leave home when I was in the States.
So you got to
Yeah,
go home?
10 days.
10 days? But you didn't get any leave when you were in Europe?
Well, I got passes.
Passes,
Yeah,
yeah.
down the Riviera for a week.
That was at the end of the war?
Yeah, after the war ended. I was there on VJ Day
Hmm.
at the Riviera. Boy, that was a...
Was that a party when that?
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
Would
All
you
over
care to talk about that?
Well, everywhere you went, there's people celebrating, women, men,
Yeah.
and you could walk by a bar, they'd grab you and pull you and have a drink, yank, you know, so.
Were you, was your unit scheduled to go to the Pacific?
No, we broke up.
You broke up, that's right, you already explained it. Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
No. When we were getting ready to go overseas, the colonel called everybody together, and he said, "If I were you, I'd send home for your fishing pole and bathing trunks." So what did you think you were going to do? South Pacific.
Yeah.
We ended up in England, so one day I drew a cartoon of a guy in a bathing suit sitting on a bench with a fishing pole, and there was attached to the bathing suit of a girl at a pool. And then the caption read, "The colonel had the right idea." He looked at it and didn't crack a smile.
Yeah, he didn't find your
He didn't
criticism.
No, he was kind of stiff.
Was he? Was he a difficult man, or?
Well, yeah, and he always reminded us that he was at Pearl Harbor
Yeah.
when it happened. So.
So was he a surgeon, or?
Yeah, he was a
was a
surgeon,
surgeon.
but he was our commander, so he didn't do that much.
Commanders never do.
No.
But you seem to have a lot of respect for the officers and the other men you worked with.
Doctors, yeah, the nurses, sure. I kept in touch with my head nurse until she passed away a couple of years ago.
What did she do after the war?
She went to work as a nurse in a factory. I went to see her a couple of times. And, you want to hear of our first meeting?
Sure.
We were setting up the boards, and the colonel called me in and he said, "You're reporting to Lieutenant Groner on Ward 18. He said, "Go down and report to her." So I went down and I walked in this room, and nothing was set up directly. I see this person in army fatigues with army fatigue hat on, squatting down making butt cans. They took a fruit can, cut it in half, and then make flaps. And she was painting it olive drab. And I said, "Hey, fella." And she turned around. She said, "I'll give you, fella." And that was our first meeting.
That's good.
And it was fun. We got along. Then she made first lieutenant, and I came in one day morning, and she had the new silver bar out. And she said, "Well, you don't like this?" I said, "Well, what?" She said, "Did you notice anything?" I said, "No." She says, "Goddamn you, Bolcar. Can't you see I made first lieutenant? Aren't you going to congratulate me?" I said, "Why should I? I earned it for you." was our relationship now.
So you worked daily with each other?
Yeah,
So it was,
well, she was our head nurse. Boy.
so it was a
Yeah, she was great.
good. Did you keep a diary?
Not really.
No. How about photographs? Or,
Oh yeah, I got a. I mean, I brought them in the car with me, but I wasn't sure.
we'd like to scan them if you allow us.
All right.
So, now we are getting to the end of the war. Do you recall the day your service ended? How you felt, what you did?
Well, I'm trying to think now. I was in France. Oh, I had wanted to throw back to England, and I was gone from our outfit. I think 3 or 4 weeks on a 10-day leave because of transportation problems. When I got back, we were living in private homes in the city of Reims. When I got back to home, the house was closed. And I was only mackerel, so I went to the MPs, and they said, boy, you're lucky. They're going home, and they took me to the camp, debarkation camp. So I just made it.
So, I guess they would have shipped you up eventually, but
Yeah, but still,
yeah,
it was
it's
scary.
nice that you went home with people you knew, and
Well,
not the people you served with,
yeah,
but
no.
yeah.
It was my time.
So why did they break up your unit?
Well, the war had ended. We were in the hospital unit had been broken up. We'd all been transferred. Those of us had longer time, went home early, and others would transfer to different organizations. And my time came up, and I've been overseas over
And that was in 46?
40. Yeah, right.
Winter?
In March.
March?
Yeah.
So how long did it take to get home?
14 days.
A long,
By
agonizing 14?
We were on a little freighter type boat. Going over, we went in convoy in 10 days. Coming back to 14.
So how about jumping back to the convoy going over? Was that nerve-wracking? Or?
Yeah, we had a couple of submarine scares, but nothing happened.
Nothing happened?
No. It was too big, a convoy. And we had, I guess, enough protection.
Oh. Good. Well, you already talked about your friendship with your nurse. But, can you talk about your career after the war? What did you do?
Well, I had worked in New York City for a company called Western Electric. And I was only there 7 months when I went for service. When I got back, I went down to see, just to say hello to some friends I had no intention of commuting again. And I walked in and I met the big boss, and he told me, he said, when are you coming back to work? I said, I don't know. He said, what were you making when you left? I said, $17 a week. He said, you come back in 2 weeks, you'll be making 34. I said, 34? And I never left.
And what did you do for him?
I did a lot of things. I worked in purchasing, then I worked in warehouse, repair shop. I met my wife there.
She was an employee also?
Yeah, and we bought our house through the company.
Really?
Yeah,
Good.
it was a great company to work for.
And did your military experience influence your thinking about the war or the military in general? Are you positive?
Well, positive that our armed forces are probably one of the best. We have a different outlook like them, say the Russians and the Germans, and they're thinking about soldiers and all. You know, we're mainly an army of free men and all, really. And we got the job done. We always will.
So something that's a matter of pride.
Yeah.
Now to talk about the VFW, I know since you are a member.
Yeah.
What kinds of activities does your post?
Well, we're pretty thin in ranks right now, you know, and They have some kind of poppy sales and things to help out.
A poppy sale?
You know, poppies, little red flowers and all.
Oh,
And then they donate money to maybe a school function or something. But in Boonton, it's not active as much because the ranks are getting thin.
and well, have you attended any reunions for your unit?
Yeah, but the last one was out in Arkansas, Camp Robinson. And then they had one last year. I just couldn't make it.
Where was that one?
That was in Little Rock also.
Little Rock? Are they all?
No, they
Just happened to-
varied, yeah.
Yeah.
But my buddy passed away, and I just didn't feel like going without him.
Was he a guy you worked with or a guy you
In
served
the
with?
service.
Service.
Yeah. We became good friends.
Mm.
In fact, I went to he was married on a post in Little Rock. And then his 50th wedding anniversary up in Michigan, I went to see him. And he was quite a guy. We got along great.
Where did he was in the same unit as you?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
Same job or
Yeah, he was a medic.
medic too?
Yeah.
Did you go to all the way together from basic training to?
No, I met him when we set up the hospital,
Mm.
you know. And we were getting ready to go overseas up near Boston. And he got word that his mother had been killed by a hit-and-run driver in Detroit. And he came to me, he said, what should I do? I can't tell you. And he said, if I go back, I'll always remember her as she lay in the casket. If I don't, I'll always remember as she was with me. And I said, well, you know, it's up to you. And he said, then again, I'm going to have to start all over again. And all those friendships that I've made, too. So he stayed with us. And we got to England, his firstborn came along. And so that took a little of the pain away. You know,
It was a tough choice for him to make.
I know, he was. He's quite a guy.
And so you stayed friends with him for?
Oh yeah, until he passed away a couple of years ago.
Well, how did the service and these experiences affect your life?
Yeah, I don't know. It's something I never thought I'd be doing. The things I did, I couldn't believe that I did them sometimes.
It made you a little bolder? Or?
Yeah, maybe, but working with sometimes helpless people is really something. You know, you see people pass away in front of you. You were never used to that. That was hard to adjust to. You know.
Well, was it tough to send the guys back to the front?
We didn't send that many back. You know.
Most of the ones that got to you were already.
They're either, you know, they're ready to go home.
Mm.
The wounds are serious enough
That they were going to head
they
home.
couldn't go back to like that one fellow I told you about,
Right.
the ranger. There was probably others, but they didn't stand out in my mind as much as this guy did. You know?
So, what kind of, do you know what kind of treatments there were for these guys that were going home? What kind of, was it therapies or rehabilitation?
Mostly rehabilitation, because the surgery was nerve damage, brain surgery, things of that sort, spinal surgery.
So a lot of brain damage? Or?
Some were, but most of them that were serious never made it, because they didn't have the facilities like they have today with all the medical advances. But the surgeon we had was terrific.
How many surgeons were there?
I don't know. We had two doctors. One was the diagnostician, and the other guy did the surgery. His name was Patton, and they called him Wild Bill. But he was one hell of a surgeon.
So it was just the two doctors?
Yeah, in our ward, yeah.
How many wards were there?
In our section, there was 6.
And each ward had a different specialty. For instance,
Yeah, right,
you were
yeah.
nerve damage. Another ward was
Or broken bones.
okay. All right,
Things like that.
all right. And then each team would be similar. They'd have two orthopedic surgeons for.
Well, yeah, it depended, like in our ward, one neurosurgeon. And you had other guys doing other things. It was a very efficient outfit.
Well, were you in buildings, or were you in a fixed hospital that you would
Yeah,
take?
that's-
So you took over a civilian hospital? Or?
No, they built it.
They
They
built
built
it?
5 hospitals in our, where we were. We were one of 5.
They prefab buildings? Or?
No, they were brick buildings.
Brick buildings?
Yeah, and the sad part was they built it on the last night of a 9-hole golf course.
You still at the front 9, I guess. Right?
Yeah, we did, we played.
Yeah.
We got a chance, we go out and play. There's only one problem with it. One hazard you don't have on a normal golf course.
What's that?
It was one hazard you don't have on a normal golf course.
Air raid?
No, they grazed sheep on them
Oh, really?
for the war effort. If you hit a ball amongst the sheep, forget it.
Is that for the wool or for the meat or for?
Yeah,
for
both.
both.
Yeah.
Well, that was the last question. So, is there anything you would like to add that I didn't cover or I didn't ask you about?
I think we covered pretty much of it.
All right.
It's been a long time since I've put a lot of this stuff back to mind, Seeing what goes on today, I can feel for these combat medics and field medics and so forth.
Well, I could. All right. I guess we're about done.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Bolcar.
all right.